to get back on the topic of the day.
Sure.
So, okay, let me. So, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was kind of the company versus company aspect.
Right. Kind of looking at, like what it means. And like, there was a great Twitter thread that kind of like, really helped put a lot of these things into perspective, talking about what the like what was like, like what kind of happened between the two. And like, I think one of the initial things we have to kind of figure out is like things like this don't come out of nowhere. It's not like someone at Improbable just woke up in the morning and went, you know what, I fucking hate Unity. I'm gonna go make a blog post and totally ruin their day. There was
Or
probably
a
something.
podcast.
Mhm. There's probably something that basically kind of precipitated that, potentially
A disagreement they had, or a.
right, or like some business negotiations broke down and failed, because obviously they were looking to have um some kind of agreement between them.
Which would have been great for Improbable to have.
Right. And I mean, and keep in mind, like Unity is a pretty sizable company. They they have a very popular engine. They're very well known. And Probable has a lot of
Money.
yeah, basically like they've gotten a lot of investment money in they've gotten a lot of investment money
Yeah, I saw.
over the years.
I was looking on their site, and they're worth like over $1 billion now.
Yeah. I mean, like and yeah, like they still I think they're still in development for their testing.
Right. Which that's just
Um,
insane.
right. Um, yeah, and so like so you have these two, you know, not small companies that are kind of basically kind of going at each other then. Probably like negotiations failed. And like negotiations like this, like it usually takes a while before like something like this really kind of goes that far south.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has probably been like literally months in the making. Like, again, like people kind of comment that um the Unity changed their terms of service back in December,
Mm-hmm.
and here we are about a month later, and now Improbable's going, well, wait a second, actually, like this isn't good for us. So there's probably like um, so, probably some of the things started going a little south back in December. Just it was kind of flying below the radar. Um, Unity was making some changes to Unity was making changes to it made changes to their TOS, to the terms of service, to looking forward to addressing a particular issue with Improbable. A lot of times, like there's kind of an unwritten kind of, I don't want to say rule, but kind of like agreement that you don't you don't talk about things like this.
An etiquette.
Right? Yeah, etiquette. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Kind of professional business. Like if you get into a disagreement, you kind of handle it and you don't like drag other people into it. But like there's no hard and fast rule about this, and obviously like a lot of times, you know, uh, doing what Improbable did is like the only way that some companies can even get any attention for the problems.
Yeah, if Improbable hadn't made their blog post, that probably no one would know about it. No one would know that there's this huge kind of situation happening in the industry, because this
Right.
can have, you know, ripple effects
Right.
with
Right.
other
Well, I mean,
companies.
right. Although to be honest, like it's not like this is a huge issue that like a lot of people need to necessarily know about.
Well, people that are trying to make content based off of the gaming industry likes to
Well,
know.
but the thing is like this is not likely to impact people.
Right.
Impacted Improbable, and then and Probable did like the thing that like one of the most reasonable things they could do. They basically kind of like struck out at Unity, and basically kind of like you could look at it as a warning, but it's one of those things that but it's also a warning that obviously it kind of like it serves it serves Improbable's business, by basically kind of turning people potentially against Unity. If they were getting support from
Epic.
From Epic, yeah, like Epic obviously was getting was benefiting for this as well.
And with Epic, I mean, we can talk more about Epic in a little bit.
Right. But so when you have like kind of two companies that kind of going at each other like this, like I said, it's kind of hard to really kind of know what precipitated this. Like and because it could have been like maybe Improbable came in and to came to Unity and was like, hey, we want a better deal than what you give everybody else because we're super great and everybody's going to love us, and so like you need to give us a better deal, otherwise we're gonna say nasty things about you. And Unity was like, no, and then Improbable did just that. Or it could be that Unity saw that Improbable had a whole lot of money, like it was worth $1 billion just for mostly from investment. And so Unity kind of went to them and said, okay, yeah, if you want to play on the platform, then you need to come and you need to cough up more money than what we expect from other people.
We are the golden boy.
Honest, right, and to be honest, like either one of those scenarios is was probably equally likely. Or it could just be like it may not even be anything quite so what's a good way to put it? Think aggressive than that. I mean, it could it could be something that's a lot just more low key.
I found the Manticore.
I see that. Your mama must be so proud of you.
Yeah. I am the golden boy. Manticore's mate.
Everything's terrible.
This podcast brought to you by the Manticore and his mate.
The Manticore's mate. Oh boy.
Your regular podcast broadcast interrupted by breaking news.
Oh god. Not my face, I'm too pretty to die.
Yay! My fame increased. Who's your friend?
Congratulations.
That was exciting. Oh, what were we talking about? Oh, there's a chest over here.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out the other things. There's a bunch of gold over here. Yeah, and so and this is kind of what like I've said, like it's really hard for us to make value judgments because we don't know what caused this. You know, neither side's necessarily, either side's going to potentially be kind of pointing the finger at the other still.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to kind of go with your gut and kind of figure out, okay, well, this makes sense or this doesn't or whatever.
Exactly.
And from a business point of view, like you kind of have to, like you said, Unity changing the terms of service is not something that's completely that's pretty normal for companies to do. So you just kind of have to kind of figure out what makes sense for. What makes sense for your company too.
And it's stuff like this. I mean, you sometimes you hear about these kind of disputes going into like lawsuits.
Right.
Because we're talking about, the difference of a lot of money being, changed or distributed or.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I think, a smart move instead of it being, oh, well, you're trying to screw us over, we're going to sue you on Improbable's part, to being, hey, guys, look at what these guys are doing.
Right.
It was smart on their part. Not saying it's right or wrong, just saying purely from a business point of view, it was smart.
Right.
For them to take it to public opinion.
Right.
Because lawsuits take time, they take money.
Right.
Turning people against another company just takes a few tweets and a blog post.
Right. And you kind of, and this kind of very public row also kind of gets Improbable some more attention for their product. They when they like you said, they kind of had first mover advantage. They kind of were able to portray themselves as the victim, and so if people retweet this stuff and talk about it, it can be done in kind of the context of it can be done kind of in the context of, oh, here's a here's a company I hadn't heard about before. I mean, like for example, I'm sure you hadn't heard about Improbable. You didn't know what Improbable did or any of that stuff. So.
I'd never heard of Improbable or even heard of Spatial OS. I had no idea about any of it. You sent me this article being like, hey, we can talk about this. I'm going, the hell is Spatial? Like, okay, Unity. Right. I know Unity. I'll be on their side.
Right. But yeah, exactly. Like, but kind of get, getting, they essentially kind of got their name out there.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around Spatial OS, but that's another thing for another day.
Right. I mean, the super short version is they like I said, they offer managed servers, essentially hosting, but they also kind of provide services on top of that. A lot of stuff kind of dealing with networking. Because they offer an SDK, a software development kit that allows them to if you use that SDK and this basically kind of use their servers, they take care of some of the trickier bits of network coding for you.
Right. Just a whole lot of complicated stuff, background stuff that a user on a server would never be aware of.
Right.
And I think that's where my issue is, because I come from the perspective of a consumer.
Right.
Right,
and most of what it comes down to is it allows a developer to basically better kind of speed up development.
Right. Oh, I was gonna
Oh, did you? Sorry.
trade you a thing, but I think
Okay.
it
Well,
might be
okay.
bound. I'm not sure. I'm coming inside.
Yeah. It's yeah. So the interesting thing, like I said, is that Epic kind of stepped into this too. Whether this was kind of a planned thing at the beginning or how they kind of.
It looked like a weapon for you.
Yeah. Whether Epic kind of and again, like this might be Epic may have precipitated this in order to kind of get more interest for their for their engine.
Oh my goodness, how amazing of like a conspiracy scandal would that be?
Right.
That would sound like all the flat earthers just through the roof. Don't trust Epic, they'll ruin your company. Oh, don't take me out of context, please.
Well, no sponsorship agreement from them.
I love you, Epic, and your store that I've never used. No, they gave away Subnautica for free.
Yeah, this is true, and I was able to play it. And I quite enjoyed that game.
Oh yeah, we need to do that thing.
The multiplayer thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got that all set up and everything, and then we got Torchlight 2 instead.
Hey, Torchlight 2 is fun.
I love it. I'm loving this game. Anyways.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, whether it was by design or kind of by accident, they like Epic did kind of, step in, show they had a horse in the race, got some more attention, to their store.
Right, and the next aspect that we're going to talk about in a little bit is the developers. The Epic as a company is now heralding themselves as setting themselves up to be, we support the developers.
Right. Well, one of the interesting things is that both Improbable and Epic set up funds for developers, saying, "Oh, we know that people are going to be affected by this, so therefore, I think Epic set up like a $25 million fund, and Improbable, I don't know if they actually said how much money they're setting aside. But
I didn't see a number figure anywhere.
But yeah, but the concept is basically that but the concept is basically though is that they are able to kind of like take kind of look like the good guys, like saying, oh yeah, like this company is totally Unity is screwing us over, but we're going to be the good guys. We're going to be the ones that basically create a fund to help developers that are put out by this, that maybe they have to change, maybe they have to take a whole bunch more time to let's say redo their game in order to use the Epic engine instead of Unity.
Right, which Unity actually released a response to that sentiment, saying that it's absolutely false and that no developer is going to be forced to their games will still work.
Right.
But Unity ignored the fact that servers, like they were just talking about games, not the multiplayer servers that the games run on.
Yeah, I mean, like
It's
you know,
complicated.
well, and I think that like it's one of those things that like it's Unity didn't necessarily want to probably go into a whole lot of detail. Again, it's considered a bit poor form to basically kind of take too much of a of a pissing contest and make it public like this. Unity's probably playing by kind of the old school rules, for better or for worse.
And see, that's what I'm saying. This needs to go on Twitter so that it's just a no holds barred
No hold
fight,
barred,
right?
Smackdown, where they can call each other names and insult each other's mothers.
And then we can all witness it in its full glory instead of reading these really kind of tame blog posts.
Right.
That'll really give us something to talk about.
Right, and well, I mean, the other thing too is like, it's generally kind of a bad idea to completely burn bridges, though.
Right, because later down the road, maybe they make amends and.
Right. It could be like if this was just purely PR maneuvering, it could potentially backfire on Improbable if developers go, oh well, I actually feel more sympathy for Unity than for Improbable, so I'm gonna stick with Unity.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think the reality is also that there's a bunch of map over to where I was.
Yeah, I cleared out this side.
Yeah, gotcha. I think the reality is that you need Improbable if you need if you're gonna do multiplayer, or I think server based. But and so that's kind of like a very specific thing. If you're making a pure single player game, you're gonna have a lot less need for Improbable services. Whereas like Unity, pretty much like if you're making a game, you kind of writing a graphics engine is going to be a lot less, not very much worth your time.
Right. And
so
there are
like Unity,
there are trade-offs between choosing to use Unity or using Unreal or using Havoc. Each engine has its strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
So sometimes you're kind of in a pigeonhole where the game that you're trying to design really like Unity's the way you want to go.
Or you say like you've hired a whole bunch of people that have Unity experience but don't have Unreal Engine 4 experience.
True.
I mean that's one of the big issues you run into when you're hiring as a developer is like you want people to kind of have very specific experience, and this is why the whole Epic kind of mind share is such a huge issue for them. Because in many
sorry, go ahead.
in many ways they want in many ways they kind of want that mind share. They if they can get people that have experience with the more people that have experience with Unreal Engine 4, like the more likely a company is going to want to hire people that have that specific experience, and then they're going to need to license the engine from them.
Right. And that Twitter thread you were talking about earlier, they were talking about an open source type of Unity engine too.
Oh right, the Godot. I'm not sure. I don't know very much about it, but yeah, like they kind of pointed out that one of the executives at Epic kind of made an offhand comment about this.
I keep dying, jeez. one of the executives at Epic made the comment.
Right. Talking about the Godot engine, which is which is kind of positioned as an open source Unity competitor, and so again, like basically kind of potentially undermining Unity.
Oh, that's interesting. Like that's really
Right.
That's a low blow.
Well, I mean, there's nothing saying that this is like their what is their intent. Like it's really
Right.
hard to this was speculation on their part, but it does kind of because but the thing is like people that use Godot aren't using
Unreal.
So I mean it would be a lot more of a spiteful move.
Right.
To do that, kind of a dick move to do that. If that was their intention.
You don't know.
Right. I mean, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about like, cause these engine. I mean, can you say that this is like an engine war competition?
I mean, given that Unity kind of put had a horse in the race, like I mean, it feels a lot more like this is an engine. It's basically two engine companies kind of facing off rather than
and just using Improbable as a scapegoat,
as a proxy. Yeah. As a proxy. Yeah.
That's actually a really interesting, because we didn't talk about that at all.
Right.
Because this feels kind of reminiscent when you talk about like the console wars in the 90s between Sega and Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just reminds me about a article I was reading about it. Because I was too young to understand console wars back then, so I had to read articles in retrospect.
Right. Where the two companies like Sega and Nintendo kind of like were trying to kind of prove themselves the best.
Right. Well, I was reading an article that supposedly Nintendo didn't want to deal with Sega as a competitor. They weren't interested in a marketing war against Sega. They just kind of wanted to, focus on marketing their games. And Sega forced Nintendo into marketing competition. Where I think Sega was trying to just provoke them and kind of push them into this competition war, because Sega was ready to be the aggressor in it.
Right.
And eventually Nintendo folded and started doing like, anti-Sonic, Sega marketing.
Right.
And things didn't turn out. I mean, Sega had was the king for arguably the king for a while. I'm biased to Sega. I'm sorry.
Shit, I was a boss.
But Nintendo won the long war.
Right.
And that's the thing, like, Sega was very, very short-term oriented. They lasted, up through 99. Like, they were still making Genesis games in 1999, which, like, looking back, I'm going, crap, they were. Like, that's crazy.
Right.
And then, they tried the Dreamcast, and the Dreamcast just kind of... I mean, I played the Dreamcast. My cousin had one, and it wasn't that bad of a console.
I thought it was a really good. The big problem, of course, is like it was perception, and this is another kind of going along the kind of the theme of you having the company versus company contest, where like the Dreamcast was actually a really good game, but like essentially Sony had better marketing, and so. Sony was able to kind of like make people kind of go, well, Sony has the PlayStation. I think it was like at the time, PlayStation 2 was coming out, and so they were able to kind of like, get people to kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to, buy the Dreamcast and invest in that because, well, the new Sony PlayStation is going to be coming out too soon.
Right. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting about the Dreamcast, one of its best selling points was also one of its weakest features. It was the first console to have online gaming.
Right.
Which sounds fantastic. Oh, they revolutionized gaming by having online on dial-up.
Well, I mean, you could buy an Ethernet. I mean, yeah, the dial-up is default. You could buy an Ethernet adapter, which would let you to connect to your home network.
But at the time, that wasn't common.
It was actually pretty common. I mean, the bigger problem was that the availability is really low.
Right.
I guess I guess I shouldn't say it's common. I mean, it was something that if you were sufficiently nerdy enough. I mean, the internet was pretty widespread at that point, so everybody kind of knew someone that could help them set up the internet.
Because the Dreamcast was what, 2000?
I want to say like 90 there.
98 in Japan.
Right.
99 in North America.
Yeah. So I mean, it came out at a time when it kind of came out in kind of this uncomfortable, awkward in between where you had kind of the change to high speed internet was happening.
Yeah, I didn't have internet until 2001 when I got my first computer.
But yeah, I mean, and so it's potentially one of those things where they Sega could have done a better job of marketing. Or kind of or selling the Dreamcast. I mean, because the Dreamcast was like a really good game console.
Mm-hmm.
Most people kind of agree it was it was a fine game console. It just lost in
the war.
Kind of in a marketing war, in a marketing and PR war, which is essentially what we're talking about with the Unity and Improbable thing.
Right, exactly.
But Unity and Improbable is it's basically kind of down to we kind of talk about is about development, focusing on developers.
Right. So to wrap up the segment, basically, we company versus company wars are brutal.
Right. Yeah, and you have to be a little, as a consumer or as an individual, you kind of careful about it, looking at, specifically, who's getting, who's benefiting from this.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at if you look at the Unity and Improbable thing, like who's benefiting from what got posted?
Epic.
Well, and that, yeah, exactly. That's so you also kind of have to look at who else. I think that Improbable, obviously, and obviously game companies are gonna post things that put themselves in the most favorable light possible, but
Right.
But I think as a developer, you kind of need to be careful about making knee-jerk reactions about what gets posted or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, lots of companies do essentially what Unity did with changing the terms of service and having potential disagreements with with a failed negotiation.
Right. And I
They really
mean,
didn't do anything out of the ordinary. Although I think that's kind of what um, Improbable wanted people to think was that this is completely out of the ordinary. That this put everybody's company at risk.
this injustice.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we covered that pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have the